wanted to talk about whether or not the Canucks should sign David Kampf, who cleared waivers yesterday, someone whom the Canucks are likely to be in on, as Kampf is a center, and everyone knows the Canucks desperately need help down the middle. But before we dive into that, I want to quickly give a quick shout out and thank you to my sponsor, Gassy Jack Art, maker of this amazing artwork you see behind my shoulder here. And you guys can check him out yourselves at GassyJackArt.com. There is a link to his website in the description down below. All right, let me talk to you. So David Kampf, most Canuck fans are probably wondering just who David Kampf is. Who is this guy? Well, David Kampf is a 30-year-old center/left winger. He's 6'2" and 198 pounds from Yurkov, Czechia. Last season, he had 13 points in 59 games, 5 goals and 8 assists. He's not a top point producer. In fact, his highest point total was in 22-23, where he had 27 points in 82 games. Now, sorry, hang on. Oops, sorry. Yeah, where was I? His highest point total, 27 points in 82 games, 7 goals and 20 assists. His career high in goals is 11, and that was the year prior in 2021-22, where he had 26 points in 82 games. Now begs the question, why should the Canucks target David Kampf, or rather sign him? He provides you with some center depth, as well as, we still don't know about Filip Chytil. We don't know what's going on with Chytil, and it's been almost a month since he's been out, and we haven't heard a peep. I've mentioned that several times on this channel. I'm actually kind of getting frustrated that we haven't heard anything, at least a minor update. Just something to sink our teeth into. But obviously, it's looking bleaker the longer we don't hear anything about Chytil. And truth be told, I think a lot of Canucks fans are under the impression that Chytil is done for the season and perhaps even his career. I know my friend Gerald on our post-game show last night, he basically thinks Chytil is done for the season, and there's a good chance that the Canucks might put him on LTIR. But you're probably wondering, what does David Kampf bring to the Vancouver Canucks? If he's a center depth piece, he doesn't really produce a whole lot. What does he bring to the Canucks that we want? Well, I'm glad you asked. And other than center depth, he's really good on the penalty kill, and everyone knows the Canucks' penalty kill is absolute shit right now. I mean, we saw it in the game last night. We've seen it over the last several games, or at least all season. You know how bad the penalty kill has been, especially, yes, we're missing 2 key pieces in Teddy Blueger and Forbart, but at the same time, we need to change something when it comes to our PK. David Kampf would help with that because he's known to be a penalty kill specialist, similar to Pia Suter. He'd certainly help with it for sure, especially while Blueger is still out. We still don't know exactly when Blueger will be back. Not to mention, he probably wouldn't cost a whole lot to sign. He wouldn't be free, but he wouldn't cost a whole lot. It would be a low-risk signing for the Vancouver Canucks. He'd likely take maybe even the league minimum, which I don't have up right now, so I don't actually know what the league minimum is. But it is a very low-risk signing, at least in my opinion. We bring in Kampf. Elias Pettersson doesn't have to take 13 defensive faceoffs on the PK like he did last night against the Carolina Hurricanes. So if we bring in Kampf, he will take those defensive faceoffs on the penalty kill, and it means Elias Pettersson doesn't have to do that, and he can focus on offense and producing. So there's a positive right there. Plus, you bring in Kampf, and you can move Reichel to the wing, and who knows, maybe he'll flourish as a winger, as Reichel isn't naturally a center. They've just put him in that role since the trade. He's a winger, and you move him to the wing, maybe he might do a lot better. I do still think Reichel needs some seasoning in the AHL, something Gerald and I talked about last night on the post-game show. I could see the Canucks signing Kampf to a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal. As I said, league minimum, maybe even $1 million or just a little over that. if Hedl is in fact done for the season, the Canucks can put him on LTIR, and that frees up $4.5 million in cap space. And according to Puckpedia, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I looked up at Puckpedia, Canucks currently have just under $3 million in cap space. So if they put Hedl on LTIR, that $4.4 million would be added to it. So they would have just a little over $7 million in cap space if they did it right now. Like literally as I'm talking to you guys right now, if they did that, they would have they would open up $7 million in cap space. Obviously, this is the last year that they can do that. So, they're probably going to take advantage of that. But yeah, that is my thoughts on David Kampf. I do think it is a low-risk signing for the Canucks. I think it would help, especially in the short term. I don't think this is a long-term solution whatsoever. This is a short-term solution, perhaps till the end of the year. I've seen some people say like, no, I don't want Kampf. He's not worth it. I don't want to spend, the cap on him. I don't want him taking part of the cap. It's very low risk, and it's not going to hurt to sign him, especially if it's a, one and done type of deal. There's always, if we sign him, we can always trade him, at the deadline, or it's kind of like with Kane in a way. It's only till the end of the year, and it's no harm, no foul. But those are my thoughts on David Kampf. I do think the Canucks should sign him. And I think it's very low risk for the Canucks. I want to pull something up real quick. Because there is an article which I will link in the description down below, that they actually talk about this. They asked this very same question on Canucks Army. It's an article written by Jeff Patterson, I believe. Yeah, J-Pat, who has been on this show. He goes on to say right here, for a team using a winger as one of its four centers for weeks now, he's referencing Luke Reichel here. The Canucks could surely plug Kampf into the middle on the roster as currently constructed, but what exactly would he bring to the mix? We already mentioned what he would bring to the mix. He does talk about like his production. He also goes on to bring up how Kampf is a career 51.4% faceoff winner. Kampf has finished with better than a 50% win rate in 7 of his 8 NHL seasons. So there's another thing that Kampf brings to the table. He's really good at faceoffs. Last season, he led all Toronto forwards in shorthanded ice time, averaging 2 minutes and 2 seconds on the penalty kill per game. As a team, the Leafs were middle of the pack last season, ranking 17th on the penalty kill at 77.9%. Oh, what the Canucks would give to be anywhere close to that these days. Again, their penalty kill is shit. Let's see, is there anything else? It says right here, the biggest issue with signing Kampf to what would surely be a team-friendly ticket to get him back in the NHL isn't finding a spot for him on the roster or in the lineup. It's that Kampf is a depth piece at best, and to slide him into a fourth-line role would mean promoting Aatu Räty and or Max Sasson to play higher in the lineup than they ought to. Honestly, when it comes to that, I don't really see an issue with that. Give them, a chance to play higher up in the lineup. It's, again, no harm, no foul with that. J-Pat does go on to say, then again, neither could produce less than Lukas Reichel has in his 10-game trial as a top 6 centerman. He's referring to Räty and Sasson, producing less than Reichel. They've actually been producing more. Although I don't know too much about Räty, but I know Sasson has gotten a few goals so far this season. In fact, he got one last night. Canucks have already traveled down Reclamation Boulevard with Reichel with little to show for the low-risk proposition. That doesn't mean they shouldn't consider a similar approach with Kampf, but with Teddy Blueger's likely return from injury at some point this month, does adding Kampf really give the Canucks much more than they already have, which is a fair point. But again, we also don't know when Blueger's coming back. We thought he might be coming back soon, but now it doesn't look like that's the case. And then I won't read the rest of this article. You guys can check it out. As I said, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. But I also wanted to look at this real quick. But regardless of if the Canucks should do it or not, the Canucks are going to be in on David Kampf. I haven't heard any other teams who might be interested in him, but I do know the Canucks are going to be interested in David Kampf. As per Rick Dhaliwal of Donnie and Dolly, he stated, "I've been told Canucks will definitely be in on Kampf. I can confirm they will be in on him." Kampf has yet to play an NHL game this season. He played 4 games in the AHL before he left the Toronto Maple Leafs AHL team. He actually got suspended for it, for leaving the team. He got suspended without pay. Basically, long story short, Kampf was not happy being in the AHL, and he kind of walked, essentially. He essentially walked out on the Maple Leafs, and the Leafs ended up suspending him without pay for it. And it led to him being put on waivers to terminate his contract so he could move on. But anyway, that is my reasoning for David Kampf being signed by the Canucks. I think it's a low risk move. But I want to hear from you, the Canuck fans. What are your guys' thoughts on the Canucks being in on David Kampf, as reported by Rick Dhaliwal? Are you okay with the Canucks signing him to a 1-year deal at a league minimum, or maybe even about $1 million? Kind of like what I'm thinking, to add some center depth and help out on the PK. Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single video. You can find us on social media. We're everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok. Feel free to give us a follow on all of our social media platforms. And if you prefer a audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. On Spotify, feel free to give us a follow, as well as rate and review us. It is, of course, greatly appreciated, and it most certainly helps out the podcast on our audio-only podcast platforms. So go ahead and do that. And as always, go Canucks go, and I'll see you guys in the next video.